Welcome to Thalira Tales, where stories bloom in silence, carrying emotion, mystery, and hidden truth. Step in and let the tale unfold.
3 months before our wedding, my fiancé brought another woman into our home. I thought I was seeing things. Standing in the foyer with my suitcase, I noticed a pair of Chanel sandals with camellias by the shoe rack. Size 8.5, not my size. Stephen, our estate manager, stepped forward to take my luggage. The look on his face suggested he had just swallowed a fly. "Chloe, you're back." Just Chloe. Not Miss Vance, not the future Mrs. Osborne. He used to call me by my first name with warmth. Now, even the tone felt hollow. I didn't ask any questions. I slipped into my own slippers and headed upstairs. The wheels of my suitcase clattered loudly against the hardwood stairs, sounding like I was dragging a corpse through an empty house. The door to the master suite was slightly ajar. A woman's laughter drifted through the crack, deliberately soft and sultry. "Damien, do you like this nightgown? I specifically chose champagne. It matches your sheets perfectly." I didn't go in. Through the gap, I saw Alyssa Sutton. She stood by the bed in a silk slip with spaghetti straps, holding a peignoir against her body. Her suitcase was splayed open on the rug. Lingerie, cosmetics, and skincare products were scattered everywhere, like she was marking her territory. I had slept in that bed for 2 years. Damien had just changed the bedding last month. He had told me, "Let's change the color, change the mood." Now I understood it wasn't the mood he wanted to change. It was the person. Damien Osborne leaned against the headboard, smoking. His robe was loosely tied, exposing his chest. "If you like it, leave it," he said. His tone was as indifferent as if he were discussing the weather. "Then, what about all these empty shelves in the closet? Can I take them?" Alyssa slid open the door to the walk-in closet and looked back at him, her eyes sparkling. But then she bit her lower lip, and her voice dropped. "There are still someone else's things in here." Damien flicked his ash, saying nothing. Alyssa walked over and sat on the edge of the bed, placing her hand on his knee. "Damien, I don't want Chloe to think I'm taking her place. Maybe I should stay in the guest room?" After a 3-second pause, Damien crushed his cigarette into the ashtray on the nightstand. "You're staying here," he said. "There's no need for you to feel marginalized." Alyssa threw herself into his arms, wrapping around him like ivy around an oak. "Damien, you're the best." I didn't make a sound outside the door. My hand gripped the handle of my suitcase. My knuckles were white from the tension, my nails dug into my palm. The sharp pain was a clear reminder that my body could still feel. Turning around, I caught my reflection in the large mirror at the end of the hall. A sharp business suit, stilettos, my hair pulled back into a neat chignon. Today, to close a corporate training contract, I had spent 4 hours on a flight back from Chicago. I had negotiated with partners in a conference room all afternoon, eating a sad deli sandwich in the back of an Uber. The contract was signed. Osborne Group had secured the exclusive development rights for the Southport waterfront project. I had rushed back to give him the good news, only to find he had prepared some news of his own for me. I walked back down the stairs, planting my foot on each step with a certainty that surprised even me. Stephen was still standing in the foyer. "Chloe, which room should I take your luggage to?" he asked. Which room? So even the estate manager knew the master suite was off limits to me now. "The guest room," I replied. Stephen took the suitcase, avoiding my eyes. The curtains in the guest room were drawn, and the air smelled faintly of dust. I sat on the edge of the bed, locking and unlocking my phone. Locking it, unlocking it. The time on the screen changed from 9:10 p.m. to 9:32 p.m. Footsteps echoed from the ceiling above. Alyssa was probably unpacking, lining up her brightly colored jars and bottles on my vanity in the master bathroom. I dialed a number. He picked up on the second ring, but didn't say anything. "It's me," I said. Andrew Roth's voice was low and steady, like coffee gone cold in the dead of night. "Is what you proposed before still on the table?" A moment of silence hung on the line. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." "Tomorrow at 9:00 a.m. City Hall in Manhattan." "All right." Hanging up, I stood and pulled the curtains back. The night outside was thick as ink. The landscape lights illuminated the manicured lawn and the imported Dutch tulips Damien had specifically ordered. I was the one who picked the variety. He hadn't bothered to change them yet. He decided to change me first. My phone buzzed. It was an Instagram post from Alyssa, a selfie of her in that champagne nightgown, leaning against the headboard in the master suite. The caption was a single word: home, the geotag, the Osborne estate, Greenwich. She either forgot to hide the story from me, or she did it on purpose. I double-tapped to like it. 30 seconds later, the post vanished. Clearly, she remembered her privacy settings, but I already had the screenshot. I saved it to a hidden folder, the same folder that held the Cartier invoices for the bracelet Damien bought her. Photos, hotel reservations, and the overlapping flight itineraries that Damien's executive assistant had secretly forwarded to me. I never interrogated Damien, not out of generosity, but because I was waiting. Waiting for my heart to turn completely cold, or waiting for the right way to leave while delivering a crushing blow. Now, I had both. At 6:00 a.m. the next morning, I was fully made up and dressed in a dark red sheath dress, not flashy, but the deep, muted color of dried blood. I knocked on the door of the master suite. Alyssa opened it. She was wearing Damien's dress shirt, which barely covered her thighs. A flash of triumph crossed her eyes when she saw me. "Chloe, is something wrong so early? I need Damien." Damien walked out of the en-suite bathroom, adjusting his tie. Seeing me in the doorway, he froze for a second. "Is something wrong?" His tone was entirely different from how he spoke to Alyssa. With her, it was careless intimacy. With me, it was business casual. I used to think that was what trust sounded like. Now I knew it was apathy. "The company is sending me to Chicago. For about a week," I said evenly, as if reading a quarterly report. Damien frowned. "For how long?" I just said, "A week." "What project requires that much time?" I didn't answer his question. Instead, I smiled. "Does it matter to you?" Damien was taken aback. Alyssa seized the moment, stepping up to loop her arm through his. "Damien, since Chloe has to travel, don't drill her with questions. Corporate trips are exhausting." She looked at me with an innocent smile. "Don't worry about a thing, Chloe. I'll take good care of the house and Damien." "The house?" She actually said the house. I stared at her for 3 seconds, then smiled. "All right. I'm counting on you." As I turned to leave, Damien suddenly called out, "Chloe." I stopped without looking back. He paused for 2 seconds before finally saying, "Take care on the road. Got it." Walking down the stairs, I counted in my head. From the moment I walked in, he had said exactly 5 full sentences to me. "Is something wrong? For how long? What project requires that much time? Does it matter to you? Take care on the road." 5 sentences. Not a single word to ask me to stay. Not a single word to acknowledge the blatant disrespect of the situation. Not a single word about my feelings. Perfect. Just perfect. Damien Osborne, since you've pushed things to this extreme, don't blame me for playing hardball. I stepped out of the mansion. The morning sun was blinding. My phone screen lit up. A text from Andrew Roth. Just 2 words. "I'm here." I turned to look back at the house I had lived in for 2 years. The curtains in the master suite were drawn back. Alyssa stood in the window holding a coffee mug, raising it from afar as if toasting me. I raised my hand too, saying goodbye not to her, but to every disgusting person and memory in that house. Then I opened my car door and drove out the gates without a second glance. Once I was a safe distance away, I dialed my lawyer. "Prep the paperwork to dissolve the prenup. Chloe, but your wedding to Mr. Osborne isn't for another 3 months. You won't need it yet." "I won't need it for him," I interrupted. My voice as light as if discussing a lunch order. "The new agreement will be signed by me and someone else." Dead silence on the other end. I hadn't actually left for Chicago. At least, not that morning. After Damien left for the city, only Alyssa and I remained in the house. I was packing my things in the guest room when she knocked. She held a glass of freshly squeezed orange juice. "Chloe, have some juice. I just made it." She was wearing my fluffy white bunny slippers, the ones I bought last month. Damien had laughed at me then, saying, "You're in your late 20s and you still wear childish things like that." Now I watched Alyssa trample those bunny ears. There was a fresh coffee stain on the white fur. "Thanks." I took the juice and set it on the nightstand without taking a sip. Alyssa paced around the room, running her fingers over the curtains, the vanity, the closet doors, as if inspecting her new domain. "The lighting in this room is dreadful," she said, her tone dripping with mock sympathy. "Are you comfortable in here? Should I tell Damien to prep the sunroom on the 3rd floor for you?" "No need." "Oh, right," she chuckled. "You're leaving for a business trip. You're only sleeping here one more night anyway." I stayed silent, opened my suitcase, and began folding my clothes. She clearly had no intention of leaving, sitting herself down on the edge of the bed. "Chloe, I've been meaning to thank you." My hands paused over a silk blouse. "Thank you for taking care of Damien these past 2 years," she said, her tone so light and natural it was as if she were talking about returning a borrowed sweater. "You can hand those duties over to me now. You deserve a break." I meticulously folded the blouse and placed it in a garment bag, smoothing out every wrinkle at an agonizingly slow pace. "How long have you known Damien?" Alyssa hadn't expected me to ask a question, and hesitated. 6 months. 6 months. Damien had proposed to me 5 months ago. He rented out an entire rooftop restaurant overlooking the Hudson. When the fireworks went off, he got down on one knee, held out the ring, and said, "Chloe, marry me." The fireworks were beautiful. Now I realized the show probably wasn't just for me. "Did you know he had a fiancé?" I asked. Alyssa looked down at her rhinestone-encrusted acrylic nails sparkling under the lamp. "I knew," she said, looking up at me with an honesty so brazen, I almost laughed. "But Damien said the spark between you two died a long time ago. He said being with you is exhausting. You're too strong, always arguing about logistics and facts, never letting him take the lead, never relying on him." She offered a tiny, self-satisfied smile. "He said being with you is like a business negotiation, but with me, it's a real romance." I stopped packing not because it hurt, but because Damien had never communicated any of this to me. What he needed, what he didn't need, what he liked, what he didn't. He never said a word. When I asked, he always replied, "You decide." I thought that was absolute trust. It turned out to be absolute apathy. "Are you done?" I looked at Alyssa. She recoiled slightly at my gaze. Her smile froze for a second before the innocent mask snapped back into place. "Don't be mad, Chloe. I didn't mean to upset you. I just think since Damien has made his choice, it's time you let go. You can't force love." She stood up, smoothing down Damien's shirt. "By the way, Damien said we're going wedding dress shopping this weekend. You know the wedding is in 3 months. But I'll be the only bride." Finally, I laughed. Not a cold scoff, but a genuine laugh. It was genuinely hilarious. "Well, congratulations." Alyssa tilted her head, confused by my reaction. "Are you really not mad? Why should I be?" I placed the last item in my suitcase, zipped it shut, stood up, and looked her dead in the eye. "You're picking up the trash I threw away. I should be thanking you." Alyssa's face dropped. "What did you say?" I said. I grabbed the handle of my suitcase. Us. Instantly us. "Chloe Vance. How dare you talk about Damien like that? You know how incredible he is. Do you know how many women would kill to marry him? If you couldn't keep your man, don't be bitter about it." She really did cry beautifully. Large tears rolled down her cheeks. The tip of her nose turned pink. Her lips quivered perfectly. I understood why Damien bought into it. "Are you done crying?" I leaned against the closet, crossing my arms. Alyssa froze. "If you're done crying, get out. I need to rest." She opened her mouth to speak, but my glare forced the words back down her throat. She stomped out. At the door, she turned back, tears still wet on her face but a smirk forming on her lips. "You can pretend to be unbothered all you want," she spat. "I know your heart is bleeding." The door slammed shut. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at my hands. The ring was still on my finger. The same one Damien slipped on when he proposed. A 3-carat emerald-cut diamond. He told me he personally selected the stone in Antwerp and had it set by the best jeweler in the diamond district. I had worn it for 5 months. It left a faint indentation on my ring finger. I took it off and placed it on the nightstand. The diamond glinted coldly in the lamplight like a frozen tear. My phone buzzed. A text from Andrew. Are your things packed? I replied with one word. Yes. Do you need me to send a car? I'll drive myself. Good. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. Don't be late. I won't be. End of conversation. My interactions with Andrew were always this brief and entirely transactional. Not a single wasted word. We were classmates in business school. He was now the CEO of Roth Investments, a private equity firm. His net worth eclipsed Damien's by tens of millions. And more importantly, he owed me. He owed me big time. Damien returned at 8:00 p.m. I was eating dinner in the formal dining room. Stephen had set a place for me separately. The dishes were simple, all my favorites. Stephen had worked in this house for 10 years. He was probably the only one who remembered my preferences. Damien and Alyssa ate in the living room. Behind the sliding doors, I couldn't hear what they were saying, only occasional bursts of laughter. Mid-dinner, the door slid open. Damien walked in holding a bottle of red wine. Chloe, we opened this bottle to send you off. After giving our bedroom to his mistress, he decided to send me off. I put down my fork and looked up at him. All right. Damien poured 2 glasses. He handed me one and kept the other. He clinked his glass against mine. A sharp ding echoed in the room. Take care on the road. The exact same words as this morning. I took a sip. The wine was dry and bitter. Damien, I started. Is there anything you want to say to me? He held his glass. His gaze lingered on my face for a few seconds before sliding away. No. I nodded. Okay. Me neither. He turned and walked out. As the door closed, I saw Alyssa waiting on the other side, immediately wrapping her arms around his waist. I downed the rest of the wine in one gulp, stood up, and carried my empty plate to the kitchen. Stephen was washing dishes. Seeing me, he scrambled to take the plate. Chloe, please, leave it. I'll get it. Stephen. I set the plate in the sink and leaned against the counter. Thank you for taking care of me these past 2 years. Stephen's hands froze under the running water. I'm leaving tonight, and I won't be coming back. Take care of yourself. Stephen lowered his head. His shoulders trembled slightly. Chloe, why let them humiliate you like this? I smiled and patted his shoulder. Humiliate? Not for long. When I walked out of the kitchen, the living room was empty. Footsteps and female laughter drifted down from the stairs, fading higher and higher. I returned to the guest room, closed the door, leaned my back against it, and closed my eyes for 3 seconds. Just 3 seconds. Then I opened them and finished packing my last few items. The ring still sat on the nightstand. The light caught the facets of the diamond, casting a sharp glare on the mahogany, ready to shatter. I left it there. By 2:00 a.m., the estate was dead silent. Only the sconces in the hallway emitted a dim, yellow glow, turning the corridor into a tunnel leading to the exit. I walked out of the guest room with my suitcase, trying to roll it as quietly as possible over the hardwood floors. Step 2, 3. Every step synced with the beating of my heart. Passing the master suite, I paused for a second. A faint sliver of light peeked from under the door. Alyssa wasn't used to sleeping in pitch black. I could hear the steady breathing of 2 people. I looked away and kept walking. As I descended the stairs, my phone lit up. A text from Andrew. A photo of a key sitting on a dark marble countertop. The keychain had a sleek silver plate engraved with the letter R. A second text immediately followed. The apartment is ready. Tribeca penthouse, 3,500 square feet. The passcode is your birth date. I stared at the screen. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I didn't know what to reply. He must have sensed my hesitation. A third text arrived. It's not charity. When you pulled me out of the fire, you didn't ask if I needed it either. I replied with one word. Okay. In the foyer, right next to the Chanel sandals, sat a pair of men's Oxfords. Damien's shoes. The toes pointed toward the door. The leather slightly creased from the day's wear. I opened the bottom drawer of the shoe cabinet and grabbed a set of car keys. The white Porsche Panamera in the garage was bought with my own money. The car, the insurance, the maintenance, all paid by me. Damien had offered to buy me a car, but I refused. I told him it felt safer driving something I owned. Looking back, we were never on the same wavelength. He wanted a woman who would pout and rely on his wallet. I was wired from birth to rely only on myself. The garage door slowly rolled up. The headlights illuminated a black Maybach parked ahead. Damien's car. The license plate ended in 777. I backed the Porsche out of the garage. Passing the Maybach, I rolled down the window and stared at that license plate for a second. Then I hit the gas and drove out the gates. In the rearview mirror, the house I had lived in for 2 years grew smaller and smaller, until it blurred into a dot of light and dissolved into the night. My phone connected to the car's Bluetooth. Andrew called. "You're out?" "Yes." "Crying?" I paused for a moment, then scoffed. "No." "Good." His voice was low, with a slight morning rasp, as if he had just woken up. "He's not worth it." Those 4 words warmed me more than every declaration of love Damien had given me in 2 years. "Andrew, after we get the marriage certificate tomorrow, can I move into that apartment you mentioned?" A brief silence on the other end, followed by a soft chuckle. "You already have the keys." At 3:40 a.m., I parked outside a luxury high-rise in Midtown Manhattan. This was my own apartment. Damien didn't know it existed. I bought it 2 years ago, putting down the deposit from my savings and paying the mortgage out of my own salary. I didn't do it because I was anticipating a breakup. I just believed a woman should always have an escape route. Now, this route was my only sanctuary. The elevator opened directly into the unit on the 42nd floor. It was a modest 800 square foot 1-bedroom, light gray curtains, a dark green velvet sofa I picked out myself. All the furniture was covered with dust sheets, like presents waiting to be opened. I pulled the sheet off the sofa, sat down, and opened the photo album on my phone. The first photo was from the day Damien proposed. Fireworks over the Hudson, him on one knee. I was covering my mouth, eyes full of tears. The waiter took it. Great angle, great lighting, like a movie poster. The second photo was move-in day at the Greenwich house. He stood at the door, holding his hand out, "Welcome home." The third was his birthday. I had cooked a massive feast. I snapped a picture right as he blew out the candles, the warm glow illuminating his face. I swiped through them, one by one. When I reached the last one, my finger hovered over the screen. The last photo was timestamped today. It was the crack in the door of the master suite. Alyssa in the champagne nightgown. Damien leaning against the headboard smoking. I hadn't actually taken a photo, but the image was seared into my brain. I selected all 321 photos in the album and hit delete. The system prompt popped up. Delete 321 items? Confirm. The screen flashed. The album was empty. Next, I opened my contacts, found Damien Osborne. His profile picture was a candid I took on a weekend. Sunlight pouring through the window, him reading a contract on the sofa. A handsome profile. I clicked edit and hit delete. Delete contact? Confirm. Deleted from WhatsApp. Unfollowed and blocked on Instagram and LinkedIn. Removed as a joint user on my banking app. Deleted his address from my Amazon account. Wiped his order history from my Uber Eats. In 40 minutes, I scrubbed Damien Osborne from every digital corner of my life, erasing him like a misspelled word on a whiteboard. At 5:00 a.m., I leaned back against the velvet sofa and closed my eyes. When I opened them, the sky outside was turning a pale, bruised blue. A.M. I washed my face, redid my makeup, and changed clothes. Not the dark red dress from yesterday, but a crisp white silk blouse and tailored black trousers. Power dressing. Like I was going to sign a massive acquisition. Before leaving, I checked myself in the full-length mirror. 26 years old. Flawless skin, no redness in the eyes, lips capable of forming a sharp smile. Perfect. City Hall opened at 9:00 a.m. I arrived 20 minutes early. A few couples were already waiting outside, some holding hands, some whispering excitedly. The women held small bouquets, the men were in suits. They all wore the same expression. a mix of nervous anticipation and hope for the future. I stood at the back of the line, holding nothing. My phone rang. "Damien." I answered without saying a word. "Chloe, where are you?" His voice was thick with sleep. "Steven said you left for a business trip in the middle of the night," I replied coolly. "If I want to make my flight, I have to leave at night." Silence on the line. Then I heard Alyssa's voice in the background, soft and clingy. "Damien, who is it?" "Nothing. Go back to sleep." Damien's voice was muffled. He had covered the receiver. Then he spoke to me again. "Chloe, did you go into the master bedroom yesterday?" "No." "Then who left the ring on the nightstand?" I leaned against the stone pillar outside City Hall and looked up at the sky. It was a beautiful day, not a cloud in sight. Perfect weather for a wedding. "I did." Damien's voice spiked in pitch. "You took the ring off?" "Yes." "Chloe Vance, what does this mean?" "Nothing," I said. "The band was too tight. It was uncomfortable. I paid $300,000 for that diamond." "I know, I cut him off. That's why I left it for your next fiancé. Don't mention it." A loud crash echoed through the phone, like something shattering against the hardwood. "Chloe Vance, you turn around and come home right now?" "Can't. I'm boarding." "Do you dare?" I hung up and turned off the phone. Exactly at 9:00 a.m., a black Rolls-Royce pulled up to the curb. The door opened, and Andrew stepped out. He wore a charcoal gray suit with no tie. The top two buttons of his shirt were undone, showing his collarbone. His hair wasn't perfectly slicked back as usual. A few strands fell across his forehead, softening his intense features. He walked up to me, looking down. "Been waiting long?" "20 minutes. Traffic," he said. The words sounded unnatural coming from him, like a man completely unaccustomed to offering excuses trying to force one out. I couldn't help but smile. "Andrew, you look so cute when you're stuck in traffic." He shot me a look, saying nothing, but the tips of his ears turned slightly pink. "Let's go." He nodded toward the doors. "Wait." I pulled a document folder from my tote bag. "Sign this before we go in." Andrew took the papers, flipped through a few pages, and raised an eyebrow. "A prenup?" "Yes. Separate assets, separate debts. Anything acquired during the marriage belongs to the individual. In the event of a divorce, there won't be a divorce." I looked up. He handed the contract back. "I'm not signing this." "Why?" "Because it's unnecessary." He looked dead into my eyes. His voice wasn't loud, but every word hit like a hammer driving a nail into stone. "I, Andrew Roth, do not get married with the intention of ever getting divorced." The morning sun hit his face from the side, casting half of it in shadow. I suddenly felt that today really was perfect weather. "You still have to sign it," I said. "It's not about trust. It's protocol." Andrew stared at me for 3 seconds, pulled a Mont Blanc pen from his inner jacket pocket, flipped to the last page, and signed his name. His handwriting was aggressive and sharp. He handed it back. "Your turn." I signed, "Chloe Vance." He folded the contract and slipped it into his own pocket. "I'll keep this. On the day of our golden anniversary, I'll burn it." I couldn't hold back a laugh. "Golden anniversary? You'll be over 70. "What?" He tilted his head. "Think I'm too old for you? No." I stopped laughing and looked at him seriously. "I'm afraid you'll regret this long before then." Andrew didn't answer. He pushed open the heavy glass doors of City Hall and held it for me. As I walked past him and the door closed behind us, I heard him say something so quietly it was almost drowned out by the echo of the lobby. "I won't be the one regretting anything." The civil ceremony took 10 minutes. The main hall was packed with couples waiting their turn. Andrew didn't wait. He led me straight to a side door marked Private Ceremonies. A clerk in a sharp suit stood by the door. Seeing Andrew, his posture instantly straightened. "Mr. Roth, right this way. Everything is prepared." I glanced at Andrew. "You set this up in advance?" "Yesterday. After you called." The room was small but elegant, with dark wood paneling and a large window overlooking the city. A desk was covered with a white linen cloth, and a vase of fresh white roses sat in the center. Sunlight poured in, warming the room. A middle-aged judge in glasses sat behind the desk. 2 blank marriage certificates lay in front of her. Mr. Roth, Miss Vance. Please have a seat. Vasette. She pulled out a velvet tray displaying 2 simple platinum wedding bands. Mr. Roth had these delivered yesterday. You may try them on. I picked one up. Engraved on the inside were 2 letters. R on one side, V on the other. No grandiose vows of eternal love, just 2 initials slotted together like puzzle pieces. Does it fit? Andrew asked. I slid it onto my ring finger. Perfectly. How did you know my size? He didn't answer. He just put his own ring on, then held out his hand, palm up. I placed my hand in his. His fingers closed around mine dry and warm. The grip wasn't crushing, but it was absolute. The judge smiled. You may fill out the paperwork. The forms were standard. Name, gender, job, social security number, marital status. When I reached the marital status box, my pen hovered. Single. 26 years old. First marriage. 3 months ago. I was planning a massive Hamptons wedding to one man. Today, I was sitting in a municipal building signing my life over to another. Life truly is a comedy. Once the paperwork was done, the judge stamped the certificates. The sound of the stamp was crisp and final. Thwack. Congratulations. You are legally husband and wife. Andrew took both certificates, inspected them, and handed one to me. Keep it. I opened it. In the attached photo, I was in my white silk blouse. He in his charcoal suit. Neither of us was smiling broadly. Just a slight curve of the lips. But somehow, this photo looked vastly more harmonious than any picture I had ever taken with Damien. Walking out of City Hall, I checked my phone. 9:10 a.m. From the moment we walked in to the moment we left, exactly 10 minutes. The couples in the main hall were still waiting. Some were dozing, some scrolling on their phones, some soothing crying toddlers. No one noticed us slip out of the VIP room. No one knew the woman in the white blouse had just permanently altered the trajectory of her life in the time it takes to buy a coffee. Standing on the steps, I took a deep breath. The air smelled like hot pretzels and exhaust. But somehow, it was refreshing. Hungry? Andrew stood next to me, hands in his pockets. His tone was as casual as if he were asking the time. A little. What do you want? Brunch? Something European? Blueberry pancakes and black coffee. From a diner, I said. He looked at me, the corner of his mouth twitching. Apparently, the answer surprised him. He nodded, opened the car door for me, and got behind the wheel himself. He navigated the downtown traffic and pulled up to a classic, slightly run-down diner in Soho 5 minutes later. The place was tiny, smelling of frying bacon and old coffee. Andrew took off his suit jacket, draped it over the back of a red vinyl booth, rolled up his sleeves, and flagged the waitress. 2 orders of blueberry pancakes, a side of bacon, and 2 black coffees. The manager, recognizing him, froze behind the counter. Mr. Roth, what brings you here? Brought someone for breakfast, Andrew said, sliding into the booth across from me. The manager's eyes darted to me, then he beamed. Of course, of course. Coming right up. The pancakes arrived steaming hot, dripping with butter and maple syrup. The coffee was strong and bitter. I cut a piece of pancake and dragged it through the syrup. Andrew. You said you owed me a lot. We're even now. He stopped eating for a second. No. Then what is this? He slid his plate of bacon over to mine. That debt is something I'll be paying off for the rest of my life. This. He paused. This. I wanted to do. I didn't press further. I just lowered my head and drank my coffee. It was delicious. After breakfast, Andrew drove me to the address he sent. The passcode is the year and date of your birth. 6 digits. He handed me a physical key fob. The place is cleaned. If you need anything, tell the concierge. Are you not going to live here? I looked at him. He met my gaze. Do you want me to live here? I didn't have an answer. Andrew pressed the key fob into my palm. His fingers brushed against mine. Don't rush. Live by yourself for a while. Let me know when you figure it out. He got back in the Rolls-Royce. The engine purred, and he merged into the Manhattan traffic. I stood on the sidewalk, clutching the key. The silver plate flashed in the sun. R. The elevator shot up to the penthouse. I punched in the passcode. The deadbolt clicked softly. The foyer lights flared to life, automatically warm, welcoming gold. I kicked off my heels and walked inside barefoot. The living room featured floor-to-ceiling windows spanning the entire wall. Light gray linen curtains billowed slightly from an open vent. The dark blue velvet sectional anchored the room. On the glass coffee table sat a pale violet orchid, its petals beaded with fresh water. On the dining table lay a crisp white envelope. I opened it. Inside was a black American Express Centurion card and a handwritten note. Andrew's sharp scrawl read, "The pin is the same as the door. Buy whatever you want. Don't look at the price tags." I folded the note and put it back in the envelope with the card. Then I walked into the master bedroom. The bed was massive, draped in pristine white linens. Folded neatly on the pillows was a set of silk pajamas. I checked the tag. My exact size. On the nightstand sat a framed photo. It was Andrew and me. The picture was taken 3 years ago at our business school alumni gala. I was standing by a window with a champagne flute. He had walked up behind me accidentally or intentionally. We ended up in the same frame. I wasn't looking at the camera, and neither was he. We were looking in different directions, but we were standing so close that the hem of my gown brushed against his tuxedo trousers. When did he even save this picture? I put the frame down and walked to the window, pulling back the curtains. From the penthouse, I could see half the Manhattan skyline. The sunlight hit the platinum band on my ring finger. V. I spun the ring, tracing the letter with my thumb. My phone rang. Not my personal phone, my old business phone, still buried in my tote bag. Only one contact was saved on it, Damien's executive assistant. I answered, "Miss Vance, Mr. Osborne is looking for you like a madman. He had me run your flight records, but no airline has a ticket booked under your name. He had me check hotels. Nothing. Miss Vance." The assistant's voice dropped to a terrified whisper. "He's tearing the office apart," he said. "He said if you don't come back." "He what?" I leaned against the glass, looking out over the city. "He's going to throw out everything you left at the estate," I chuckled. "Tell him to go ahead. Everything I took is mine. Whatever I left behind, I consider garbage anyway." I hung up and powered off that phone for good. Then I fell backward onto the massive bed and closed my eyes. The sheets smelled of cedar. Maybe it was the detergent. Maybe it was Andrew. I buried my face in the pillows and took a deep breath. My heart beat slowly and steadily, not like back at the Osborne estate, where every muffled sound from the master bedroom made it race and flutter in panic, like a bird trapped in a cage. Everything was different now. The cage was open. The bird was gone. It took Damien 3 days to realize something was fundamentally wrong. I heard about his spiral later from Stephen, the estate manager. Stephen spoke to me on the phone in hushed, trembling tones, like a man describing a horrific car crash he'd just witnessed. On the first day, Damien didn't look for me. He went to the office as usual, ran meetings, and during his lunch break, Alyssa brought him a homemade meal. She took a dozen selfies in the elevator of the Osborne Group Tower and posted them on Instagram. Bringing lunch to my love, and just housewife things. That evening, he took Alyssa to Le Bernardin, the French restaurant he promised to take me to. I had tried to get a reservation there 3 times and failed. He made one phone call. Alyssa posted a photo dump. The wine, the caviar, Damien's hands cutting a steak. The view. With the right person, every day is a celebration. Stephen said Damien drank a lot that night. Alyssa had to support his weight as they walked through the front door. Passing the guest room, he stopped. "Did Chloe call today?" "No," Alyssa replied. Damien stared at the closed guest room door for a long time before Alyssa guided him upstairs. On the second day, Damien started looking. He called my cell straight to voicemail. Sent iMessages undelivered. He ordered his assistant to track me. The assistant scoured airline manifests and hotel registries across the country. Nothing. He started to panic. Stephen said Damien paced the living room for hours, gripping his phone, dialing my number over and over. Every time, the robotic voice told him the subscriber could not be reached. Alyssa came downstairs in a silk slip, holding a glass of warm milk. "Damien, stop calling her." She's not a child, she won't get lost. Maybe she just wants some space. Damien whipped around to face her. Shut up. The glass in Alyssa's hand shook. I said, shut up. It was the first time Damien had ever yelled at Alyssa. Steven said Alyssa looked like she'd been slapped, but she recovered quickly, set the glass down, walked over, and placed a hand on his shoulder. Her voice melted like butter. I'm sorry. I'm just worried about Chloe too. She's all alone in a strange city. What if something happens? Damien didn't push her away, but he didn't look at her either. He stared at the red exclamation marks next to his texts, typing and deleting messages, before finally hurling his phone onto the sofa. Find her friends' numbers. Call everyone. The assistant called my entire network. My friends all gave the same answer. Chloe? Isn't she with you? I don't know. Haven't heard from her. She's probably busy with a deal. She'll be back. No one knew where I was because I hadn't told anyone. On the third day, Damien lost his mind. He forced the security company to pull the estate's surveillance footage. The video showed me walking out of the guest room at 2:00 a.m. with a suitcase, stopping for 1 second outside his bedroom door. Then, without looking back, walking down the stairs. The foyer lights flicked on and off. The garage door opened. The white Porsche reversed out into the driveway. The taillights left 2 red streaks in the dark before vanishing completely. Damien watched the footage on a loop. Steven said he sat in his home office, staring at the monitor, playing it back like he was looking for a hidden clue. He saw me pause outside his door. He saw my perfectly straight posture walking down the stairs. He saw me take the keys from the drawer. He saw my profile flash in the Porsche's window, no tears, no hesitation, no looking back. Then he ordered the staff to tear the guest room apart. The closet was empty. The vanity was bare. The only thing left on the nightstand was a glass, with a sip of water. The 3-carat diamond ring sat on the nightstand in the master bedroom, glittering under the lamp. Beneath the ring was a piece of paper. Printed on it were 4 words. I don't need you. Printed, not handwritten. I specifically used the printer in the guest room because handwriting betrays emotion. Typed letters are as cold and factual as a contract. Damien crumpled the paper, flattened it out, and crumpled it again. The paper turned into a jagged ball in his sweaty fist. When he flattened it a final time, the ink had smeared. Find her. He threw the note onto his desk. His voice was raw, like sandpaper dragging over rusted metal. Tear the city apart, but find her. His assistant stammered. Mr. Osborne. Should we file a missing persons report with the NYPD? Damien was silent for a long time. Report what? His voice dropped to a hollow whisper. She's not missing. She left. He finally said it out loud. Not kidnapped, not in an accident, not missing. She just packed her bags, took off the ring, and at 2:00 a.m., drove out of his life. Cleanly, permanently. Meanwhile, I was sitting on the blue velvet sofa in Andrew's penthouse, a mug of hot tea by my feet, a thick dossier in my lap. Andrew's assistant had dropped it off. The cover read, Risk Analysis. Osborne Group's Southport Waterfront Project. I flipped to the first page. Dense rows of data and charts all pointed to one conclusion. Osborne Group's investment in that plot of land was a ticking time bomb. This was the very plot I had secured for them on my trip to Chicago. Damien thought that by winning the exclusive development rights, he had won the lottery. What he didn't know was that the city was planning a massive expansion of the subway system right underneath it. According to the city's new zoning plan, a new transit hub exit would eat up a full third of the commercial square footage. Once the zoning plan went public, Osborne Group's entire architectural blueprint would be garbage, and the billions they sunk into the initial phase would evaporate. I had discovered this discrepancy during the negotiations. I didn't tell Damien, because that night, standing outside the bedroom door with my suitcase, I heard him tell Alyssa, "There's no need for you to feel marginalized." The doorbell rang. I set the dossier down and went to the door. Andrew stood there holding 2 heavy brown paper bags. Dinner. He rattled the bags. The spicy, pungent aroma of garlic, chili oil, and ginger wafted out. Authentic Szechuan from a place down the street. Don't know if you eat spicy food. I do. He walked into the living room. Seeing the dossier on the coffee table, he paused. Read it already? Yeah. I took the bags to the kitchen island and started unpacking takeout containers. When Damien bought this land, he didn't order a geological survey, and he didn't check the municipal zoning boards. He just looked at the location and the price tag and thought he got a steal. Andrew leaned against the kitchen doorway, crossing his arms. And you didn't remind him? Why should I? I popped the lid off a container of Dan noodles. He's the CEO. He should be smart enough to figure it out himself. Andrew smiled. It was the first time I'd seen him actually laugh out loud. Not a polite boardroom smile, but a genuine laugh that crinkled the corners of his eyes and showed a hint of teeth. Chloe Vance, you are far more ruthless than I gave you credit for. I'll take that as a compliment. We sat down to eat. The food was so spicy my eyes watered, but I couldn't stop eating. Mid-meal, Andrew's phone buzzed. He glanced at the caller ID, then turned the screen toward me. Damien Osborne. Answer it? Andrew asked. I picked up a piece of spicy chicken with my chopsticks. Answer it. Andrew tapped the screen and put it on speaker. Damien's voice blasted out, raspy and frantic. Andrew. I need a favor. Speak. You know Chloe Vance. You guys went to Stern together. Has she contacted you? Andrew looked at me. I nodded. She has. Dead silence on the other end. Then, the sound of Damien's rapid, shallow breathing. Where is she? You think I'd tell you, Damien? She's my fiancé. Damien's voice skyrocketed. Andrew's voice remained absolute ice. Then why did your fiancé pack her bags and move out of your house in the middle of the night? More silence. A long, suffocating silence. I thought Damien had hung up. Then his voice came back, much lower this time, as if he were physically choking on the words. What did she say to you? She said she doesn't need you anymore. Andrew hung up. He flipped the phone face down on the table. Eat. I stared at the food in my bowl. Andrew. Yeah? Do you think he'll find me here? He won't. Andrew dropped a dumpling onto my plate, and even if he did, he wouldn't dare step foot inside. Why? I looked up at him. The warm kitchen pendants reflected in his dark eyes. Because this isn't his territory. A week passed. I had lived in Andrew's penthouse for 7 days. In that time, I deactivated all my social media, changed my SIM card, slept until noon, sunbathed by the floor-to-ceiling windows, read books, and drank tea. Andrew came over every evening for dinner. Sometimes he brought takeout. Sometimes he cooked. He was surprisingly good in the kitchen. His honey, glazed ribs were phenomenal. On the 7th night, he brought an invitation. Heavy charcoal gray cardstock with silver embossed lettering. The Roth Foundation Charity Gala. Host. The Roth Foundation. Venue. The Ritz-Carlton Grand Ballroom. Time. Tomorrow evening. Do you want to go? He tossed the invitation onto the coffee table. I picked it up and scanned the guest list. Lots of familiar corporate heavyweights. Damien Osborne's name was on there too. Next to it, a note. Co-sponsor. Accompanied by Alyssa Sutton. You arranged this? I asked. Andrew sat on the sofa, crossing his legs casually as if discussing the weather. The gala happens every year. I just had my office add Osborne Group to the VIP list this time. Why? Because I want to see. He looked directly into my eyes. Do you want him to see? See me as Andrew Roth's wife. I do, I said. He smiled, reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a dark blue velvet box, and set it next to the invitation. Then wear this. I opened the box. Inside rested a necklace, a massive pear-shaped sapphire surrounded by a halo of flawless diamonds. Under the living room lights, it radiated a deep, oceanic blue, like it held a piece of the midnight sky. Beneath it sat matching sapphire stud earrings. This is too expensive. The jewelry worn by Andrew Roth's wife cannot be cheap. He stood up, lifted the heavy necklace from the velvet, walked behind me, and fastened the clasp at the nape of my neck. His fingers brushed against my skin. They were cool, but the spot he touched instantly burned. I'll pick you up tomorrow at 7. The night of the gala, I wore a floor-length black velvet gown. The plunging neckline perfectly framed the sapphire. I swept my hair into a sleek, high updo to showcase the earrings. The woman in the mirror didn't look like me. It wasn't the makeup or the dress, it was the eyes. Before, standing next to Damien, my eyes always held a trace of anxious appeasement. Before every corporate event, I would meticulously check my appearance, terrified of embarrassing him in front of his partners. In photos, I always leaned into him, linking my arm through his, flashing a rehearsed corporate wife smile. Then, I was Damien Osborne's fiancée. Tonight, I was Andrew Roth's wife. Not an accessory, not a piece of jewelry, but an equal standing beside him. At exactly 7:00 p.m., Andrew appeared at the door. He wore a sharp black three-piece suit. His tie was a deep midnight blue, perfectly matching my sapphires. His hair was slicked back, exposing his sharp jawline. He looked like he walked straight off the cover of GQ. Seeing me, his gaze locked for a full second. "Well?" I did a slow spin. "Flawless," he said, holding out his arm. I slipped my hand into the crook of his elbow, and we stepped into the elevator. Our silhouettes reflected in the mirrored doors. He was half a head taller than me. The hem of my gown brushed against his trousers just like that photo from 3 years ago. The Ritz-Carlton ballroom was a sea of flashbulbs. A red carpet led to the entrance, flanked by paparazzi. The event coordinator, spotting Andrew, practically sprinted over. "Mr. Roth. Right this way, please. Your seat is at the head table. And your guest?" The coordinator's eyes darted to me, confusion flashing across his face. "My wife." Andrew's voice wasn't loud, but several journalists nearby snapped their heads around. I felt a dozen camera lenses pivot to lock onto us simultaneously. "Wife?" The coordinator almost dropped his clipboard. "Mr. Roth, you got married?" "Recently." Andrew slid his hand from my arm to my waist, pulling me flush against his side. "Be a good man and add my wife's name to my place card." When we entered the ballroom, it was already packed. The head table sat dead center, covered in elaborate floral centerpieces and crystal glassware. Andrew's name card was right in the middle. Next to it sat a freshly written card, the ink still glistening. "Mrs. Roth." Every eye in the room was glued to me. I could hear the aggressive whispering cutting through the jazz music. "Who is that? When did Roth get married? I've never seen her before. What family is she from? Wait, isn't that Osborne's girl? Chloe something?" I sat down next to Andrew with an expression of absolute boredom. He pulled the chair out for me, waiting until I was seated before taking his own place. The movement was so fluid and natural. Everyone watching knew it wasn't just a gentlemanly flex, it was habit. A commotion erupted at the entrance. Damien Osborne had arrived. He wore a charcoal gray suit. His face was gaunt, with dark circles under his eyes, visible even from a distance. Alyssa clung tightly to his arm. She wore a champagne-colored mermaid gown and a string of pearls, beaming and posing for the cameras. Then her gaze swept over the head table, past Andrew, and slammed into me. Her smile died instantly. Damien saw me too. He stopped dead in his tracks. Even across the massive ballroom, I watched his expression morph from shock to confusion to rage, and finally, to a profound, desperate panic I had never seen on him before. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Alyssa tugged at his arm. "Damien, our seats are over there." Damien didn't move. He ripped his arm out of Alyssa's grip and started marching toward the head table. He walked fast, his dress shoes cracking loudly against the marble floor. He stopped right in front of me. "Chloe." I looked up at him. "Long time no see, Mr. Osborne." "Not Damien." "Mr. Osborne." His Adam's apple bobbed hard. "Where have you been these past few days? Why wouldn't you answer my calls? Why?" His eyes dropped to the sapphire necklace resting on my chest, then to Andrew's arm draped casually over the back of my chair, and finally to the handwritten card on the table. "Mrs. Roth." Those two words stabbed him in the eyes like daggers. "You got married?" He choked out. "Yes." "To who?" Andrew stood up. He was half a head taller than Damien, looking down at him with zero emotion. "To May." Damien's fists clenched so hard his knuckles turned white. "Chloe, we were engaged for 5 months. You vanished without a word, and immediately marry someone else?" His voice was a harsh hiss through gritted teeth. "Are you playing a game with me? Playing a game?" I stood up, leveling my gaze with his. "Damien, you moved another woman into our home. You moved her into our bedroom. You let her wear my slippers. use my vanity, sleep in my bed. And you have the nerve to ask if I'm playing a game? Damien's face drained of blood. Alyssa just stayed for a few days. Stayed for a few days? So you had to change the name on the wedding venue to hers? He froze. How did you know about that? Alyssa posted a story on Instagram, I said. Location: Vera Wang Bridal. Caption: Bridal prep. You were standing right behind her. Your face was in the mirror. Damien's lips moved, but he couldn't form a defense. Just then, Alyssa scurried over. She latched onto Damien's arm, gave Andrew and me a vicious once-over, and plastered on a sickly sweet smile. Congratulations, Chloe. I didn't expect you to find a replacement so quickly. She put heavy emphasis on the word replacement. I didn't even look at her. I looked at Andrew. Husband. I paused for a second after saying it. The word still felt new. Andrew looked at me, a spark lighting up the dark depths of his eyes. This woman is calling you a replacement. I slipped my hand into his. What do you think? Andrew took my hand. His thumb traced the platinum band on my finger. Then he lifted his chin, looked right past Alyssa, and locked eyes with Damien. Mr. Osborne. His voice wasn't loud, but the entire ballroom had gone dead quiet to eavesdrop. What you threw away, I spent 3 years trying to acquire. So tell me, who is the replacement here? Damien's face went completely ashen. He stared at me, a storm of incomprehensible emotions raging in his eyes. Chloe, Mr. Osborne. I cut him off. Tonight is a charity gala, not a college reunion. Your seats are over there. I gestured with my chin toward the far corner of the room. A table shoved against the back wall, the worst seats in the house, with terrible sightlines. Andrew had arranged it perfectly. Damien didn't move. He stared at me for a painfully long time, so long that the surrounding guests began to murmur. Finally, he dropped his gaze, turned, and walked away. Alyssa scrambled after him in her stilettos, the hem of her ridiculous mermaid gown dragging awkwardly across the floor. They sat down at the corner table. Alyssa's face was thunderous, her lips pressed into a thin, angry line. The radiant smile she had at the entrance was entirely gone. Damien slumped into his chair and didn't look at her once. His eyes burned a hole across the room, through the floral arrangements, through the crowd, staring fixedly at the head table. At me. Andrew handed me a glass of champagne, leaning in close so his lips brushed my ear. Nicely played. I wasn't playing, I replied. His hand holding the glass paused. I turned my head to look at him. The crystal chandelier reflected brilliantly in his dark eyes. When I called you my husband, I meant it. The gala went on, and halfway through the dinner, Alyssa decided to make a move. The charity auction began. The first lot was a vintage pearl necklace. The auctioneer hyped up its history, owned by some 1920s socialite, lost abroad, finally brought back to the States. Starting bid, $2,000. Andrew raised his paddle. 2,000. 500. A woman at the next table. 3,000. Andrew. 3,000. $500. From the dark corner of the room, a shrill, saccharine voice rang out. $5,000. It was Alyssa. She held her paddle high, chin tilted up with the smug grin of a conqueror. After shouting her bid, she shot a look our way, locking eyes with me. Her message was clear. This necklace is mine. The auctioneer beamed. $5,000 from Miss Sutton. Do I hear 6? Andrew moved to raise his paddle, but I grabbed his wrist. Don't. He glanced at me. That necklace is garbage, I said, keeping my voice low, but loud enough for the neighboring tables to hear. Pearls are graded on symmetry and luster. Those pearls are asymmetrical, and the luster is dull. Even $2,000 is a ripoff. Let her have it. Alyssa's smug smile cracked. The auctioneer coughed awkwardly. $5,000 going once, twice. Sold. Congratulations to Miss Sutton. Alyssa won the necklace, but she looked like she'd been force-fed a lemon. The next item was a vintage imperial jade bangle. An intense, translucent emerald green, clear as frozen spring water. Starting bid, $10,000. This time, Alyssa didn't raise her paddle. Not because she didn't want to, but because she couldn't. 10 grand was serious money for her. And Damien hadn't looked at anything since he sat down. His eyes remained locked on our table. Andrew raised his paddle. $20,000. The room fell silent. Jumping straight from 10 to 20 grand wasn't bidding. It was an execution. No one challenged him. The auctioneer slammed his gavel. An attendant brought the jade bracelet to our table. Andrew took it, gently took my left hand, and slid it onto my wrist. The vibrant green jade looked breathtaking against my pale skin. "Now this," Andrew said, "suits you." I felt the stare from the corner table grow searing hot. Damien was watching me, not my face, but my wrist. He remembered. He remembered me telling him about my grandmother's jade bangle, a family heirloom lost by my aunt. I told him I wanted to buy one like it someday, not as a status symbol, but as a memory. I had mentioned it to him multiple times. He always brushed it off. "Yeah, sure. We'll go look at some eventually." It never happened. Now, that bracelet was on my wrist. Bought by Andrew Roth. Damien suddenly stood up. His chair screeched violently against the floor. Every head at the nearby tables snapped toward him. "Damien!" Alyssa grabbed his sleeve. He ripped his arm away and marched straight back to our table. "Chloe, we need to talk." Andrew put his champagne down. "Mr. Osborne, you are interrupting my wife's dinner. Whatever business you have, take it up with me." Damien didn't even look at Andrew. He stared at me. 5 minutes. I picked up my napkin, dabbed my lips, and stood up. "Fine. 5 minutes." Andrew looked up at me. I gave him a subtle nod, letting him know I had this. The corridor outside the ballroom was lined with thick carpeting that swallowed the sound of our footsteps. Crystal sconces on the walls cast a dim, yellow light, throwing harsh shadows across Damien's face. "What do you want to talk about?" I leaned against the wall, crossing my arms. "Did you really marry him? The certificate is in my purse. You want to see it?" Damien clenched and unclenched his fists. "Why? Give me one good reason." "A reason?" I tilted my head. "Damien, the night you brought Alyssa home, I stood right outside your bedroom door and heard you tell her, 'There's no need for you to feel marginalized.' That reason is more than enough." His pupils contracted. "You were outside the door. I heard everything, from start to finish. How you let her live in our room, use my closet, wear your clothes, and the next morning when I told you I was leaving, you said, 'Take care on the road.'" The corridor fell dead silent. Only the low hum of the HVAC system filled the space. "Damien, I gave you a chance." My voice was as light as a feather dropping onto the carpet. "I asked if you had anything you wanted to say to me. You said no. So now, it's too late." I turned to walk back inside. He lunged forward, grabbing my wrist. Hard. His nails dug into my skin. "Chloe, you can't do this to me. We were together for 2 years. And you marry another man in 10 minutes? He was practically vibrating with rage, the words forced through his teeth. I looked down at his hand crushing my wrist, then back up at his face. "Damien, it took you 5 minutes to move Alyssa into our bed. Compared to you, I took my time." His grip loosened. "Chloe, and one more thing." I pulled my phone from my clutch, pulled up a PDF, and shoved the screen in his face. "That plot of land in Southport you just bought. The MTA subway expansion plans were published last week. Look at it yourself." Damien took the phone. The screen displayed a highly detailed city zoning map. A thick red-dotted line sliced right through the Osborne Group's newly acquired plot. The legend read, "Proposed transit hub exit." The exit was sitting exactly where his flagship luxury mall was supposed to be built. His hand started to shake. "Where did you get this blueprint?" "I was the one negotiating the deal," I said. "I received all the municipal filings, including the city planning grid." "But you signed the final contract without asking me a single question." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because..." I stepped closer, looking him dead in the eye, enunciating every word clearly. "When I came home that night, you had another woman in our bed." The last bit of color drained from Damien's face. He stumbled backward, his shoulder hitting the wall. "You did this on purpose." "I didn't do anything on purpose." I snatched my phone back. "I just stopped wiping your ass for you. Do you know how many times I saved you these past 2 years? You got blackout drunk with clients. I dragged you home. You botched negotiations. I fixed the terms. Your mother's birthday. Being your father's anniversary, I bought the gifts. I even wrote the recommendation letter for your sister's Ivy League application. I adjusted my sleeve, letting the emerald green jade bracelet catch the light. Damien, I am not your mother. I am not your executive assistant. And I am not a vase to decorate your mansion. You never wanted me. You wanted a crisis manager to fix your life, and a toy to bat her eyelashes and stroke your ego. Alyssa is perfect for the second role. I wish you both a lifetime of happiness. I walked down the hall without stopping. Behind me came the dull thud of a fist slamming into the wall. Alyssa was lurking around the corner. She looked awful. She was clutching that $5,000 pearl necklace in her hand like a lifeline. Chloe Vance, you orchestrated this whole thing, didn't you? Yes. You just wanted him to regret it. I stopped and looked at her. Whether he regrets it or not is none of my business. Drop the saint act. Her voice shrilled, echoing in the empty hall. You married some billionaire and now you're back to humiliate us. Who do you think you are? Who do I think I am? I pivoted and walked slowly toward her. Alyssa, the slippers you wear are mine. The vanity you sit at is mine. The man you're currently sleeping with is the trash I threw away. She took a step back. The house you live in, I picked it out. The bed you sleep in, I bought the mattress. The plates you eat off, I shipped them from Italy. Even that overpriced citrus tea in your fridge, I brewed it myself. I stopped inches from her face. In my heels, I towered over her. You are draped head to toe in my leftovers. And you have the audacity to ask who I am? Alyssa's lips trembled violently. She couldn't formulate a single word. I smiled, reached out, and plucked the pearl necklace from her fingers. She tried to yank it back, but one hard look from me paralyzed her. I held the pearls up to the light. $5,000 for this garbage. Damien will reimburse you, right? Her face twisted. He declined my card. Alyssa bit her lip, tears welling up in her eyes. I laughed, dropped the necklace back into her trembling hands, and patted her shoulder. Cherish it. At least you bought it yourself. I was still smiling when I walked back into the ballroom. Andrew saw me and raised an eyebrow. Handled? Handled. I sat down, picked up my knife and fork, and went back to cutting my steak. It was cold, but I didn't care. Andrew, thank you for the MTA blueprints. He didn't say anything. He just quietly swapped my plate of cold steak with his untouched hot one. 3 days after the charity gala, the sky fell on Osborne Group. First, the MTA officially published the Southport subway expansion plan. That morning, Osborne Group's stock tanked 12%. Investors screamed at Damien on conference calls for 40 minutes. The general consensus was, "Are you completely illiterate? You buy commercial land without checking zoning laws?" Damien couldn't defend himself because he genuinely didn't check. He trusted me too much. Or rather, he was too accustomed to me handling the intellectual labor. Before, for every project, this time, he signed his name and lost everything. The second disaster hit the same afternoon. Osborne Group's largest supplier suddenly terminated their contract. The official PR excuse was strategic restructuring, but Damien's assistant found out that a subsidiary of Roth Investments had swooped in the night before, offering the supplier an exclusive contract at a 15% markup. The third hit came hours later. Construction on Osborne Group's massive New Jersey logistics center was halted by the state due to environmental compliance violations. The compliance paperwork was the one thing Damien insisted on filing himself. Then came the fourth, the fifth, the sixth. In 3 days, Osborne Group's market cap evaporated by $400 million. Damien's father, Peter Osborne, flew back on a red-eye from London. At the emergency board meeting, he eviscerated his son in front of all the senior executives. You bet the entire company on a piece of ass. Damien sat at the far end of the mahogany table, completely silent, because it was true. It was entirely his fault. When he brought Alyssa home, he didn't think about the consequences. When he gave her my bedroom, he didn't think about the consequences. When he watched me drive away at 2:00 a.m., he didn't think about the consequences. Now, the consequences had arrived. Every single blow was precise and devastating, a perfectly engineered chain reaction. because it was a perfectly engineered chain reaction. In Andrew's office overlooking Wall Street, one entire wall was a massive glass whiteboard. It was covered in flowcharts, Osborne Group's shareholder structure, project maps, supplier lists, partner networks. Every node was meticulously connected, and every vulnerability had an interception plan. He had been building this board for 3 years. 3 years ago, at that Stern alumni gala, Damien had tried to get me blackout drunk. I have a high tolerance, but he didn't know that. He kept coming over, pouring champagne, saying, "Chloe, you handle your liquor so well." He wanted to see me make a fool of myself, to prove to his frat buddies that the woman who beat him for valedictorian was actually a mess. Andrew pulled me away from the table. He walked me to a quiet hallway, gave me a bottle of water, and stood guard at the door so no one would bother me. He didn't say a word that night, but starting the very next day, Osborne Group data began appearing on his whiteboard. "You've been prepping this since then?" I stood in the doorway of his office, staring at the glass board. Andrew sat at his desk, capping a red dry erase marker. "Yes. Why didn't you tell me? Because back then, you still loved him." He tossed the marker onto the desk. "I didn't want you to think I was forcing you to choose." I walked into the office and sat across from him. The name Damien Osborne was circled heavily in red on the board. Dozens of lines shot out from it, almost all marked executed. "How much is left?" I asked. "One final move." Andrew pulled a file from his drawer and slid it across the desk. "Their New Jersey logistics hub. Their last remaining cash cow. If we choke this project, their operating capital runs dry in 30 days. I opened the file. It contained the land deeds and municipal permits. "Is there a zoning issue with this plot, too?" "No." Andrew leaned back in his leather chair. "The plot is prime real estate. The paperwork is ironclad. Surprisingly, Damien actually didn't screw this one up." "Then how do you?" "I'm not touching the project." I looked up at him. The desk lamp caught his eyes, reflecting a terrifying, absolute calm. "I'm taking his people." The next morning, the chief engineer of the New Jersey project, along with his entire 40-man technical team, submitted their resignations to Osborne Group. Damien offered to triple their salaries. Not a single person stayed, because Roth Investments offered them not just a salary bump, but equity in a new subsidiary. By day 5, Damien was sitting alone in his corner office at the top of the Osborne Tower. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of Billionaires Row. His father built this 40-story tower 10 years ago. From here, you could see half the city, including the much taller, sleeker Roth Investments skyscraper. His assistant knocked and entered, clutching a manila envelope. "Mr. Osborne." We heard back from the banks. Damien didn't even turn around. And? All 3 banks denied the credit extension. The assistant's voice was shaking. "The stated reason is significant uncertainty regarding Osborne Group's financial solvency." Damien pressed his palm against the cold glass of the window. The chill seeped straight into his bones. "And one more thing, sir." The assistant placed a sleek, black folder on the desk. "A private equity fund owned by Roth Investments just submitted an acquisition offer." Damien whipped around. "An acquisition of what?" "Of Osborne Group's stake in the Southport project, and a 51% controlling interest in the New Jersey Logistics Center. The offer price." The assistant swallowed hard. 60 cents on the dollar. 60% of market value wasn't an acquisition. It was a slaughter. It was holding a gun to a dying man's head and emptying his pockets. Damien ripped the folder open. The terms were brutally clinical. Every word breathed arrogant superiority. No threats, no grandstanding, just a cold statement of fact. "Your company is bleeding out, and I am the only one with a tourniquet." On the last page, the signature was already there. Andrew Roth. The handwriting was aggressive, slicing across the paper like a blade. Damien hurled the folder across the room. "Tell him to go to hell." The assistant didn't move. "Mr. Osborne, this afternoon, several board members held an emergency vote." Damien froze. "What?" "7 votes in favor. 2 against. Your father, Peter Osborne. He voted in favor. His own father. His own father sat in a boardroom and voted to sell the family legacy to a hostile buyer. Damien collapsed into his chair. The imported Italian leather he had sat in for 5 years. He had signed countless deals in this chair, played God with hundreds of careers. Now, he didn't even own the chair anymore. His phone buzzed on the desk. A text from Alyssa. Damien, I saw a Birkin in the boutique. Limited edition crocodile. Will you buy it for me? It's only $80,000. Damien stared at the text for a long time. Then he picked up the phone and dialed. Not Alyssa's number. Mine. The phone rang while I was watering the orchids on Andrew's balcony. It was an unknown number, but I knew the digits by heart. I answered. Chloe. Damien's voice was utterly destroyed, rasping like he'd swallowed glass. He set this all up, didn't he? What are you talking about, Andrew? Buying out Osborne Group. He calculated everything. The Southport land, poaching the engineers in Jersey, squeezing the banks. Everything. I set the watering can down and leaned against the glass railing. Damien, you signed the Southport contract yourself. You failed to retain your own engineering team. The banks cut your credit because your company is a liability. You made every single one of those decisions yourself. Dead silence on the other end. My biggest mistake wasn't any of that, he whispered, his voice cracking. My biggest mistake was letting you walk out of that bedroom. The evening breeze blew across the balcony, carrying the faint noise of Manhattan traffic below. Damien, I said softly, your biggest mistake wasn't letting me walk out of that bedroom. Then what was it? It was that you never, ever considered me important. I hung up and immediately blocked the number. Andrew. I didn't notice when he stepped out onto the balcony, holding 2 mugs of Earl Grey tea. He called? Andrew asked. Yes. I took a mug. The tea was a rich golden amber. He said you calculated everything. Andrew leaned against the sliding glass door and took a sip. He's right. And what exactly were you calculating? I looked at him over the rim of my cup. The sunset cast a warm, fiery glow over his features, softening the sharp angles of his face. I was calculating you. Damien learned the full truth on the day the acquisition was finalized. The signing ceremony was held in the exact same Ritz-Carlton ballroom where the charity gala took place, where he had seen me wearing Andrew's sapphires. Andrew did this on purpose. He rented the entire room, arranging the tables and chairs exactly the same way. Even the floral arrangements were identical. When Damien walked in, he froze. He recognized the setup. He saw the place card at the head table. Andrew Roth. And next to it, Mrs. Roth. Just like that night. Only this time, he wasn't the humiliated guest in the corner. He was the defeated king, surrendering his crown. Representatives of Osborne Group's shareholders sat on one side of the massive oak table. Roth Investments' legal team sat on the other. When Damien entered, everyone looked up. No one stood. Even his father, Peter Osborne, sat at the far end, both hands resting on his cane, staring at the wood grain. He didn't look at his son once. Damien signed the transfer documents. The scratch of the fountain pen against the thick paper sounded like something tearing. He put the pen down. Where is Andrew? Roth's lead attorney looked up, adjusting his glasses. Mr. Roth is not attending the ceremony. He asked me to pass along a message. What message? He said. Thank you for the Southport property. You saved me months of negotiations. Damien's jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth would crack. At that moment, the ballroom doors swung open. I walked in. Not as Mrs. Roth, but as Chloe Vance. Chloe. Damien bolted upright like he'd been electrocuted. I didn't look at him. I walked straight to the table and placed a thick file directly in front of his father. Peter, this is the original geological survey report for the Southport plot. It was filed in the Osborne Group archives a month before your son signed the final contract. Peter Osborne snatched the file, flipping through the pages. The color drained from the old man's face. Damien, the patriarch's voice wasn't a yell, but it commanded the entire room. Did you see this report? Damien looked bewildered. What report? The MTA Geological Survey. It says right here in black and white that a transit hub is slated for the exact coordinates of our retail foundation. This report was delivered to your desk 3 months ago. Damien went pale. Impossible. I never received that. You received it, I said. Every eye in the room shifted to me. I personally put it in the urgent signatures tray on your desk. March 12th. It was a Monday. You came back from your morning meetings. There were 7 dossiers in the tray. This report was the 3rd one down. Damien's eyes darted frantically, trying to access the memory. March 12th. He muttered. You left the office early that day. I stated flatly, because Alyssa called and said she was feeling sick. You drove out to see her. You went shopping on 5th Avenue. That night, you posted a photo dump on Instagram. 9 pictures. The center one was her throwing a penny into the Bethesda fountain. Damien's hands began to shake violently. You never came back to the office. Out of the 7 urgent files, you signed the top 2. The other 5, including this survey, you didn't even open. The ballroom was dead silent. Thwack, thwack, thwack. Peter Osborne slammed his heavy wooden cane against the marble floor. Damien! The old man's shoulders heaved. You ignored critical corporate intelligence to go shopping with a mistress? Damien had no words. He stared at me. His eyes were a chaotic storm of betrayal, horror, and realization. You knew the report was in there, he rasped. You specifically put it 3rd in the pile. You orchestrated this. You knew I wouldn't see it. Why didn't you warn me? I smiled. Damien, I was your fiancé, not your secretary. Doing your due diligence was a courtesy I extended out of love, not my contractual obligation. When you started taking my labor for granted, you shouldn't be surprised that one day, I decided to only do exactly what I was paid for, which was nothing. Peter Osborne stood up, his finger pointing at Damien, shaking with rage. Did you hear her? You did this to yourself. You have no one else to blame. I handed you the keys to this empire 5 years ago. What have you actually accomplished? Every single win you had was Chloe operating behind the curtain. Did you really think you were a genius? Damien collapsed back into his chair, mute. Peter Osborne leaned heavily on his cane and limped toward the exit. As he passed me, he stopped. Chloe. The old man's voice cracked. The Osborne family wronged you. There's no need for that, Peter, I said calmly. It's business. He nodded slowly, grief aging him 10 years in a minute, and continued walking. At the double doors, he turned back to look at his son one last time. Damien. Your grandfather built this company with $200 in his pocket. In 5 years, you handed 3 generations of blood and sweat to a stranger. The doors closed heavily behind him. The ballroom was empty save for Damien, myself, and the Roth lawyers packing up their briefcases. Damien leaned forward, bracing his weight on the table as if his spine had dissolved. Chloe, when did you start planning all this? The first time you let Alyssa sit in the passenger seat of my car. His pupils dilated. He had probably forgotten that day completely. But I hadn't. It was our 1-year anniversary. I booked a Michelin-star restaurant, bought a new dress, and waited for him downstairs. He pulled up. The passenger door opened, and Alyssa stepped out. She pretended to twist her ankle, and he caught her by the waist. Alyssa needed a ride, so I picked her up, he said, as casually as commenting on the traffic. I barely ate that night. Alyssa sat across from me, smiling her sugary, innocent smile. Chloe, please don't get the wrong idea. Damien and I are just friends. And Damien had just nodded in agreement. That was the first time I saw her in my passenger seat. But not the last. Damien, I said, do you know that women never leave suddenly? Every departure is the climax of 1,000 silent disappointments. Why didn't you tell me? I told you. I stared him down. I told you 100 times. I texted you to come home early. You said you were busy. I asked you not to let other women ride shotgun. You called me petty and controlling. I told you Alyssa looked at you differently. You said I was paranoid. I pulled out my phone, pulled up our chat history from a year ago, and shoved the screen toward him. I kept the receipts for every single word. Damien stared at the screen, his eyes bloodshot and welling with tears. Did you think I didn't know your phone passcode was her birthday? Did you think I didn't notice you bought 2 of every souvenir on your business trips? Did you think I didn't know she helped you pick out my engagement ring? Damien's head snapped up. How did I know? I slipped my phone back into my purse. Because the manager at the boutique in the Diamond District is my sorority sister. The receipt had both your names on it. Damien swayed on his feet. Chloe. The fireworks the night you proposed were beautiful, I said. My voice as detached as if I were narrating a documentary. But the man kneeling under them, I realized that night, he wasn't mine anymore. I turned on my heel and walked out. Behind me, a heavy, sickening thud echoed through the room. Damien had fallen to his knees. The sound of his kneecaps hitting the marble was like a bag of cement dropping from a height. I didn't look back. Andrew was waiting for me in the corridor. He wore a navy suit, no tie. He was holding a paper cup of hot tea. Did you tell him? I told him. He handed me the tea. The heat seeped comfortably through the cardboard. He's on his knees. I know. Andrew looked at me. Do you feel sorry for him? I took a sip of the tea. Caramel? No. I looked up at him. The warm corridor lights softened his sharp jawline. Andrew, I said, Damien Osborne is on his knees in there. But you are standing right here beside me. He paused for a heartbeat. Then a slow smile spread across his face. Let's go. He held out his hand. I placed mine in his, and we intertwined our fingers. The doors to the ballroom remained open. The shadow of Damien Osborne, kneeling on the floor, stretched long and broken across the marble, like a crack that would never heal. Damien stayed on his knees long after I left. Eventually, hotel security had to physically lift him up. The head of security called Andrew later to report it, sounding bewildered. He said Damien knelt there for 40 minutes until his knees bled through his suit pants. Andrew hung up the phone and looked at me. He wants to see you. I flipped a page of my Vogue magazine without looking up. I don't want to see him. 3 days later, Damien's mother, Eleanor Osborne, showed up at Andrew's office. This woman rarely made public appearances, not even at board meetings. She wore a simple but ruthlessly elegant street-john knit suit, clutching a Birkin bag. Her makeup was flawless, but the deep lines around her eyes betrayed her exhaustion. When the receptionist called up, Andrew and I were playing chess. Send her up, I said. Andrew looked at me. Are you sure? I'm sure. Entering the office, Eleanor's eyes locked onto me instantly. She stopped in the doorway, unsure of what to call me. Chloe? Mrs. Roth? Finally, she settled on. Chloe. I stood up. Eleanor, have a seat. She sat down, placing the Birkin in her lap like a shield. Chloe, I'm not here about the company, she began. I'm here about Damien. I said nothing. He hasn't left his room in 3 days. He won't eat. He won't drink. He hasn't said a word. I went in to check on him. He was sitting on the floor, holding a photograph. Eleanor reached into her bag, pulled out a photo, and slid it across the glass coffee table. It was a picture of Damien and me in the Hamptons 2 summers ago. He had me hoisted on his shoulders. I was laughing in terror, and he was grinning like an idiot. He found this in the boxes of things you left behind, Eleanor said, her voice shaking. You didn't take it. I had no reason to. Eleanor's eyes grew red. Chloe, I know Damien wronged you. He was blind, manipulated by that Alyssa girl. But he gets it now. He realizes his mistake. Eleanor, I interrupted. What exactly does he realize? She froze. He realizes he was wrong. Wrong about what? I stared her down. Wrong to move Alyssa into our house? Or wrong to ignore the MTA report? Wrong to kick me out of my own bedroom? Or wrong to assume I would never actually leave? Eleanor had no answer. He doesn't realize his mistake, I said coldly. He just can't accept the bill that came due. If Andrew hadn't bought out his company, if the zoning on that plot was fine, if he was still the untouchable CEO of Osborne Group, do you really think he'd be kneeling on a ballroom floor crying over a photograph? Eleanor's lips quivered, and the tears finally spilled over. But he is in so much pain right now. He earned every bit of it. When she left, Eleanor stood in the doorway for a long time. She didn't beg anymore. She just looked at me with a gaze that was equal parts regret, pity, and absolute surrender. When the door clicked shut, Andrew picked up his black knight and moved it to the corner of the board. Checkmate. I looked down. My white king was trapped. You won. You threw the game. He started resetting the pieces. You started making intentional mistakes on Move 37. I didn't deny it. A week later, Damien was discharged from Mount Sinai Hospital. He had been admitted for 5 days with severe dehydration and a bleeding stomach ulcer. On the day of his release, paparazzi caught a photo of him outside the Greenwich estate. He was wearing a gray hoodie, the hood pulled low over his face, looking emaciated and hollow. Behind him was the house I lived in for 2 years. The imported Dutch tulips had withered and died. The photo hit page 6 with the headline, Osborne heir broken and bankrupt. Alyssa commented on the post from her verified account. Damien, I will always stand by you. 3 hours later, Damien deleted her comment. 2 hours after that, Alyssa posted on her own story. Some people don't appreciate what they have until it's gone. She probably thought Damien would see it and beg her to come back. She didn't know he had already deleted all his social media apps. Half a month later, Andrew and I had our real wedding. It was held at his family's sprawling estate in the Hudson Valley. No press, no massive guest list, just our closest friends and family. Andrew's grandmother, sitting in her wheelchair, beamed the entire evening. After we exchanged our vows, she grabbed my hand. You're even prettier in person than in the photo. What photo? I asked. She pulled a folded, slightly worn picture out of her cardigan pocket. It was the photo of us from the Stern Alumni Gala. This boy kept this picture on his desk for 3 years. She laughed. I kept telling him, if you like the girl, go get her. And he'd just sigh and say, I can't. She's with someone else. I looked over at Andrew. He was talking to a groomsman, but the tips of his ears were visibly red. At the end of the night, the estate manager brought over a thick envelope. Mr. Roth, someone left this at the front gates. Andrew opened it. Inside was a cashier's check and a handwritten note. The amount on the check was 3 times the original purchase price of the Southport property. The memo line read, Offer to repurchase Southport asset. The note had one line, written in Damien's frantic scrawl. Chloe, I bought the company back. Can you come home now? Andrew handed me the note. I glanced at it, then folded it in quarters. What do you want to reply? Andrew asked. I held the folded paper over a silver candelabra on the table. The flame licked the edge. The paper curled, blackened, and disintegrated into ash, fluttering onto the tablecloth. Nothing. Andrew watched me for 3 seconds, then held out his hand. Let's go home then. I put my hand in his. It was warm and solid. When we walked out the front gates of the estate, night had completely fallen. Under a massive oak tree by the road stood a solitary figure. Gray hoodie. Hood pulled low. Damien. He looked even thinner, a ghost of the man he was. Seeing me, he took a desperate step forward. Andrew's grip on my hand tightened slightly. I don't need you to fight this battle, I murmured to Andrew. I let go of his hand and walked toward the tree. Damien's dead eyes suddenly ignited with a frantic, pathetic hope. Chloe, I stopped 3 feet away from him. I saw the check. The property is not for sale. He froze. I'll pay double. Whatever you want. It's not about the money. I reached into my clutch, pulled out a thick silver-embossed envelope, and handed it to him. Damien took it with trembling hands and opened it. Inside was a wedding invitation. Andrew Roth and Chloe Vance. You came out here to give me an invitation? The wedding was today, I said, my voice perfectly level. This is a souvenir for you. Damien, you always accused me of never leaving you an out. Today, I'm giving you one. This invitation is your way out. Out to where? To a lifetime of regret. He looked up at me, his eyes mapped with broken red capillaries. Chloe, I swear to God I get it now. Just give me one more chance. Just one. Damien. I cut him off. Do you know the biggest difference between you and Andrew? He stopped breathing. When you kicked me out of our bedroom, you told me to take care on the road. When he handed me the keys to his penthouse, he told me I already had a home. The autumn wind whipped through the branches above us. One man pushed me out into the cold. The other brought me inside. Who do you think I was going to choose? Tears finally spilled over Damien's eyelashes, tracking through the dirt on his gaunt face. He collapsed to his knees in the dirt right in front of me, clutching the red and silver invitation to his chest. Chloe. Damien, if you take anything away from this entire ordeal, let it be this. I looked down at him, feeling absolutely nothing. Not everyone who leaves comes back. I turned my back on him and walked toward Andrew. He held out his hand, and I took it. The moment the door of the Rolls-Royce closed, I heard a raw, agonizing scream echo from the darkness behind us. CHLOE! The sound was swallowed by the wind, like a wound that would never, ever close. I didn't look back. The car pulled onto the highway. The glowing lights of the city skyline appeared in the distance. Andrew kept one hand on the steering wheel. He turned to me, then reached over and took my hand. Are you going to cry? No. Good. You'll never have to again. I leaned my head back against the leather seat, watching the city rush by. No, I never will.
I'm freezing. I'm bleeding. Slowly fading away. But don't worry, I'm fine. The cold has settled in my heartbeat, like winter living in my veins. Every breath feels numb and fragile. Every smile just hides the pain. I'm breaking quietly in silence, falling slow without a sound. Yet I keep saying I'm okay, while my world burns to the ground. I'm frozen here, I'm bleeding slowly, dying piece by piece inside. But I still whisper, it's alright, just to keep you from goodbye. I'm shattered, love, but don't you worry, I'll pretend till my last breath. Even while my soul is fading, I'll say everything's okay. Maybe pain just learned to live here. Maybe sorrow feels like home. So I wear my wounds like armor and survive them all alone. I'm frozen here, I'm bleeding slowly, dying piece by piece inside. But I still whisper, it's alright, just to keep you from goodbye. I'm shattered, love, but don't you worry, I'll pretend till my last breath. Even while my soul is fading, I'll say everything's okay. If you ever see me smiling, no, it's just my last defense. 'Cause sometimes love means hiding how much you're suffering. I'm frozen here, I'm bleeding slowly, dying piece by piece inside. But I still whisper, it's alright, just to keep you from goodbye. I'm shattered, love, but don't you worry, I'll pretend till my last breath. Even while my soul is fading, I'll say everything's okay. It's okay. I'm freezing. I'm bleeding, slowly fading away. But don't worry, I'm fine. The cold has settled in my heartbeat, like winter living in my veins. Every breath feels numb and fragile. Every smile just hides the pain. I'm breaking quietly in silence, falling slow without a sound. Yet I keep saying I'm okay, while my world burns to the ground. I'm frozen here, I'm bleeding slowly, dying piece by piece inside. But I still whisper, it's alright, just to keep you from goodbye. I'm shattered, love, but don't you worry, I'll pretend till my last breath. Even while my soul is fading, I'll say everything's okay. Maybe pain just learned to live here, maybe sorrow feels like home. So I wear my wounds like armor and survive them all alone. I'm frozen here, I'm bleeding slowly, dying piece by piece inside. But I still whisper, it's alright, just to keep you from goodbye. I'm shattered, love, but don't you worry, I'll pretend till my last breath. Even while my soul is fading, I'll say everything's okay. If you ever see me smiling, no, it's just my last defense. 'Cause sometimes love means hiding how much you're suffering. No, I'm frozen here, I'm bleeding slowly, dying piece by piece inside. But I still whisper, it's alright, just to keep you from goodbye. I'm shattered, love, but don't you worry, I'll pretend till my last breath. Even while my soul is fading, I'll say everything's okay. It's okay.